Hello, everyone. My name is Ariel Berlinski. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Movement, and I'm here to give you the pulse on all things going on throughout this ever-changing industry, what we're up to at the agency, and talk with some of our incredible experts that are here with us today. We are going to be diving into managing social strategy in an uncertain world, our method of creating brand character for our clients, and the rise of subcultures, amongst other subjects. So let's kick things off. I would love for each of you to go around, introduce yourselves, talk about how long you've been with Movement, and name one client you've loved getting to work with since hopping on board here.
I'll start. I am Rachel Schneer. I am the head of strategy at Movement. I've been here for about 5 years. I absolutely love working with my longtime clients, Amazon, and some of my other favorite clients have been projects we've done with Sony.
Love it.
Awesome. And I'm Gabby Benitez. I am the Senior Strategy Director here at Movement. I will be hitting 3 years in September. And I have such a passion for working with all of our entertainment clients. Sony, like Rachel mentioned, Spotify, Prime Video. We have so much fun with them.
Amazing.
Awesome. I can go next. Good morning. My name is Camille Lieurance. I have been at Movement for 6 months now. I am a strategy director on the at Amazon flagship handle. And so we run the Instagram, the TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Pinterest.
Amazing. So exciting. Thank you all so much. So to start, I feel like we owe it to the world to talk about what it's like managing social media strategy in these uncertain times. We have spending behavior shifting. A lot of people are cutting back, they're trading down, they're kind of looking for justification before they buy. And Camille, I would love to know, how does that shape what you're prioritizing on social right now?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Ariel. So right now we're seeing people become far more intentional with their money, and that shift on social means that it isn't just about entertainment anymore. It's really earning things. We've seen a lot of development with social commerce availabilities, things like TikTok Shop. So we know that people are still spending. We just have to give them that reason to spend. So we're really prioritizing content that answers the unspoken questions, like, is this actually worth it? So using creators to help validate that, real world use cases, really clear value cues. Everything really needs to justify its place. So we're focusing a lot more on like proof over polish, like the testimonial, receipts, products that actually have good reviews, value forward storytelling, making sure that someone can understand the role that product would actually play in their life and how it would fit into their routines. And then also community cues, like really servicing the reasons why people are coming back.
I love that. It's very important to really kind of master that formula because we're just constantly trying to get a pulse on what works and what doesn't, especially when you're a brand and you're finding your footing. And what are some other ways that you suggest to brands to continue to show up in those meaningful ways when their followers are more financially cautious, but they see them showing up and in the comment section and engaging and spending time on those platforms?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think one thing that we have really kept at the heart of it is that caution doesn't mean disengagement, right? So people are still there, they're still tuning into social. We look at monthly usage and see that people are still looking for online for those products. So we just know that they're filtering a bit harder and we're really trying to meet them in the moment. So really trying to slow the scroll with relevance, like really making sure that the content that we're giving is meeting them where they're at in their season of life, really reflecting behavioral trends. We really lean into making sure that like seasonality trends that feel evergreen are coming into life, making sure that the products are making sure that they match their mindset, and then also making sure that utility and joy is at the heart of all of our content, and then also making sure that everything feels really, really human. I think something that we have really tried to focus on is making sure that it doesn't feel algorithmic, but really human, and making sure that our audience feels like they're at the heart of it. A lot of things are in flux. People are still going to want to purchase products though, so we're really trying to stay locked into their needs to make sure that we're staying relevant.
I love that. And aside from, it's hard to narrow down like between that element of joy or seasonality. What would you say if you had to pick one of all the elements? What would be the one principle that led the change as the overarching umbrella, whether it's just platform versus budget or it's behavior related? What's that single one if you had to boil it down?
That's, a great question. I think it comes down to utility, right? Like people want to make sure that the money that they're spending is money that is going to give them some form of like purpose, that the product is going to be worth the spend. I think we can put joy at the heart of it, but we're really trying to validate why people should purchase these products and also make sure that they're products that have a place in their life and it's not algorithmic and, they're going to be coming back.
That's so true. And people are starting to have a shift in that they're treating social less like a place to discover new brands, but more, as you were saying, of that space where they're getting their decisions validated. And how does that shift your approach to content?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, validation is something that we've definitely seen emerge more and more. Discovery will always be at the heart of it, but there's a huge behavioral unlock happening right now. And it's that we're not just trying to introduce these brands, we're trying to confirm that the products that we're pushing forward are the right choice. So in terms of like how we're framing up the content, it's less of like you've never heard of this, but more of like here's what people love. So for example, one thing that we push forward on the Amazon account are 5-star favorites and really pushing forward products that we know get good reviews and are able to make that discovery process feel also validating and be joyful. A lot of that happens with the real people, real reviews, and real world proof, and making sure that there's a lot of like social reinforcement, right? So we often look for UGC that will show and really tell the story as to how that product can fit into somebody's routine. We really, at the heart of it, want to make sure that there's a trail of credibility. It's no longer about just being seen, impressions. It's really about being co-signed by our community.
Absolutely. And what better way to trust a brand than to hear from the people that are tied to it, that care about it, that are passionate, that are advocates for them. Truly, there is nothing better. I love that. Thank you so much, Camille.
Of course,
So,
great questions. Thank you.
of course. One thing that when I jumped into movement truly blew me away, and Rachel, I would love to hear you speak on this. There are so many industry terms that are thrown around for describing that combo of target audience and the voice of a brand, whether it's personas, profiles, muses. But what led you to develop this incredible proprietary method of the brand character within our agency?
Yeah, so something that we discovered as we were working with different brands and doing their playbooks, creating tones of voice and look and feels, was that the traditional advertising approach to developing these tones of voice just weren't enough for what we needed day in and day out on social media. They're great for one-way conversations in TV spots or billboards or magazine spots, but they don't really translate to being able to speak with your consumer in a two-way conversation all day long like we do on social. So a group of strategists and data experts and creatives within Movement got together and developed what we call the brand character, which uses this traditional approach to building tone of voice, do's and don'ts, we sound like this, we don't sound like this, etc., and infused that with what we knew about characters, which comes mostly from TV, movies, novels, these characters that can grow over time, that you feel connected to, that have origin stories, which may be their whole own movie or series, or the prequels and the sequels. And we really saw a parallel with what we do and the stories that we tell at Movement in that space. So we got together and collectively developed this brand character to be able to tell these stories in a really rich and deep way that other brands we don't see doing in this space.
I think it's fantastic, and it's such an essential piece for brands to sink their teeth into. But I know that the process must be just so in depth. I think we would all love to hear a little bit more about what that process is like with developing the brand character from the start.
Yeah, so one of the things when we were having those initial discussions in developing our method for this was that the creative team felt like they didn't necessarily have true facts to build from. We, of course, did research and paired, our 4C's insights together in order to spur this development, but it just, again, didn't feel like quite enough. So we start with social listening and the 12 Jungian archetypes. So every brand, every character, every story across all of time has started with these, or can be described as one of these Jungian archetypes. So we look at a brand and how they are speaking to their audiences on social media and what archetypes that represents in conversation. We then also look at the audiences and evaluate how they think about the brand in conversation and what archetype that relates to. And then, of course, we look at the brand and what archetype they want to be or think that they are. We pair all of those things together. We do a really fun workshop with our clients, again, putting them in the mindset of their brand as a character. So if we were to, if you were to be the star of a television show, who would play you? What would it be about? Where would the setting be, etc.? Those are really great sessions that allow us to get to the heart of not just who we think the brand is, but also who they think the brand is, so that we can develop this really rich story. So already that is way more than what most people do when developing a voice and tone and look and feel for a brand. But from there, we move into both internal traits and external traits. Now, those external traits are your classic voice and tone and look and feel. But what's really different for us is those internal traits. So using the identified and primary archetypes for the brand, we then use AI to help us create a really rich, deep background story for these brands. So where did they come from? Where were they born? What was their life like? What challenges did they have? And a lot of this is parallel to the challenges of the brand, because this brand character is, in its essence, a true representation and ultimate personification of a brand. So we also include things like motivations, and this is really what we pulled from that world of script writing and other forms of storytelling, really understanding a character so that as you follow them throughout the course of a film or a book or a series, you really understand who they are, and that's the type of connection we want to build with our audiences.
That just blows me away. I know I personally wish I could sit in on one of those brand character sessions. I feel like it would be like sitting in the writer's room of SNL. You're just creating a sense of magic for brands. That's just...
Yeah, it's really fun, and so far our clients that we've done this with have really enjoyed it, and they look forward to these sessions.
That's amazing. And as you said, there is so much more that goes into this than anyone would assume from looking from the outside. So how do you go about keeping this process from feeling overcomplicated?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, especially in the beginning when we were coming up with it and figuring out how to develop it, it, started obviously a little all over the place. Over time, we've been doing this for about 2 years now. We've really been able to zero in on that process. One of the biggest things that we use and that has helped us is our ability to use AI to help us both characterize or categorize rather the archetypes in our social listening, and then also pulling through those archetypes into these stories. Gabby worked very closely, as did other members of the strategy team, our data team, and our creative team to help develop these prompts that we use with different AI tools to really keep this process streamlined. We are still working to streamline it even further, make it even less complicated, but we try to keep the complexity to us and the work that we do internally, but what the client sees should be fairly straightforward. Here's how we identified your archetypes, here's the story, and then here is your character and how they express themselves. So we really try to keep it just to those basic steps in our external conversations while we sort of mad science it in the background.
That is so cool. And how have clients been responding to these brand characters you've been creating so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Like I said, those workshops are so fun, and a lot of our clients really look forward to them. We look forward to them. Like you said, it's like a writer's room. It's really an opportunity for us to peel back the layers and get to the heart of who our clients feel like their brand is and what they want to represent, so that we can try to get them there. Sometimes, it can be a little bit confusing. Is this is this our audience? Is this who we are as a brand? Is this separate from our brand? We've been working on trying to have that understanding, and then also to really internalize, not just for us and our team creating and developing content and strategizing against it every day, but also for the clients to use as a filter about approving content or what we should be responding to in the reactive space. But really at the core of it, like, this is the ultimate personification of your brand. If your brand were a character in a movie, this is how they would feel, act, behave, engage with those around them. And that should ultimately be the filter for every decision that's made for any piece of content on social media, or quite frankly, anywhere. Because this isn't just for social media. It is truly the personification of a brand at its most ultimate form.
That's incredible. In speaking to the brands that this captivates them, they love the idea of creating a brand character, but they sit there and they say, Rachel, but we're too small. We're not cool. We're not relevant enough to make one. How would you respond to them?
Well, first I would say cool and relevant has nothing to do with it. Any brand can be a character. It doesn't necessarily need to be a cool character. And I think relevance is also relative. So who are you being relevant to? Where are you being relevant? In what spaces? Who are you trying to reach? We did mention that we are evaluating both owned and earned conversations to identify archetypes. We don't necessarily need to do that if you're launching as a brand. We can really just base it on the archetype, opportunity that you want your brand to be and build around that, because what we do is use these archetypes as the factual foundation to create these more fictional narratives off of, and ensure that there is that pull through from archetype to actual character at the end of it. So any brand we can work with and do this at any level. Being cool has nothing to do with it. Your character could be an old lady for all I know, or an old man who is grouchy, and that's what the audience wants to see because it's funny. I don't know, like a Larry David curmudgeon, like that could work just as well as any young, cool Gen Z sort of voice or character that we put out there.
Thank you for sharing that, because I know that's going to give such a sense of relief and reassurance and empowerment for the brands that really want to take that on. And like I said, I'm sure anyone would be eager to sit in that room and experience that process, because you're acting like a puppeteer to so many different elements, and it's fabulous to have heard you unpack that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ariel.
Now, Gabby, I want to discuss something that's on a lot of people's minds that we're seeing across social. A lot of brands are having conversations around this, and there's this rise of subcultures. We're seeing this noticeable shift, and these brands are going from speaking to the masses to showing up in a smaller, more specific space. And I would love to know, pick your brain on why you think subcultures are becoming this new power center for brands.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with what Rachel was talking about in terms of brand identity. I don't think it's new to anybody that we are living in a moment where individual identity and self-expression and community is like at the top of everyone's mind. When you think about where social started and how millennials were like the target audience for all brands, like we were dubbed digital natives, right? Like now we're seeing this shift towards Gen Z and now even Gen Alpha coming in, and they're more so, I would say, like digital curators. Like they're not just scrolling. Yes, the doom scrolling is a part of it. It will forever be a part of it. But they are more so now than ever, like actively shaping their online worlds around their passion points, their hobbies, their identity markers. It's not just broad demographics. I'm a Gen Z, so this will resonate with me. I think in a way, social media has almost like decentralized influence, allowing more niche communities to form and lead specific cultural conversations, and subcultures are now almost like tastemakers and early adopters, and they're fueling trends, and some of those trends and some of those formats end up going mainstream. But I think overall, engaging with subcultures is different than just reacting to a moment, right? It's not about, I'm going to jump in on this trend or I'm going to jump in on this moment. It's more about how are you as a brand building long-term relevance by consistently showing up, by listening, by not just demanding attention, but adding value to the people that are going to sustain your brand and advocate for your brand over time, not just with a fleeting moment of virality.
Absolutely. And talking about that in making it worth investing in the long term, what does it look like when you have a brand who says, I wanna tap into a subculture, but I wanna do it well.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to hear an example where this really has worked and you've seen it be
Yeah.
successful.
I think ultimately it's about that genuine participation versus like any kind of what is our opportunity for peak marketing at this point. I think it needs to be truly like, let's listen first. Let's understand like how are we going to respect the norms and the aesthetics of the community or the communities that we want to be a part of, and showing up with something of value, not just again extracting attention. I think a lot of brands still find this shift intimidating, but it's not necessarily a new shift because we're seeing brands like legacy brands, right? Like Lego and Red Bull, who have done this over time consistently to the point where they're now leaders within their subculture spaces, right? It's not necessarily a comfortable thing to say, hey, we're not speaking to everyone anymore, right? Like we're going to focus on building deeper resonance with specific people. It really is about a mindset shift. And when Lego came into the social space, they didn't come in and say, hey, well, we advertise and we communicate this way across other marketing channels. This is how we have to do it on social. They sat there, they listened, they uncovered kind of their adult fan community of adult Lego builders. And they said, this is our space for those people. We're going to advocate for them. We're going to co-create products with them, and we're going to elevate them within social. You see it with Red Bull too, right? Like they've been doing it for years where they have a stronghold on these subcultures of thrill seekers and adventurers and extreme sports lovers. And I think what's most impressive about a brand like Red Bull is that they are big, but they've remained so much consistency within their subcultures over time, from their tone of voice to their content to their partnerships to their sponsorships to any kind of content that's going out within digital forums. They've managed to maintain mass awareness in a way that hasn't diluted their brand identity to the point where people who aren't thrill seekers, aren't extreme sports fanatics, can look at Red Bull and admire that brand for its clarity and for its commitment.
And I think it's such a key thing there. What's sort of underlying everything you just said is that concept of authenticity. That's such a buzzword in our industry. It's been thrown around for years and years. I know I've written it in probably 1.5 million decks, but I think that there really is still something there that's true. The communities that you mentioned that Lego is a part of or that Red Bull is a part of, those are not communities that they forced themselves into. Those are communities that were true to their brand identity and who they wanted to be and how they wanted to engage in the space. And that's what allowed those communities to embrace them because it felt true to the brand as true as it felt to the community.
And to that point, it's really about having people work on your brand that reflect the people that you're trying to reach, right? Like if people are creating content for you day in and day out, and they're creating strategies for you day in and day out, then they need to understand the communities that you're trying to reach.
Absolutely. And you can't speak in one format or one tone or to one audience because you truly would be missing out on so many untapped markets of potential, which is why I would love to hear from anyone who has an opinion on this, but where can a brand go wrong then in their approach to tapping into this world of subcultures, aside from being, inauthentic?
Well, I think yeah, go ahead, Camille, go ahead. I've talked enough.
No. It's a lot of value. I think something that's been really interesting for me is when brands try to get really, really niche. Something that we saw were brands who really had like no part in like jumping into like the Cowboy Carter conversation, right? Instead of focusing in on areas where they might have had success on places like Reddit, sub-communities who are already talking about those brands, instead trying to go in a really big, trending, popular format. I mean, there are millions of Beyonce fans on Earth, right? So investing your time, your money, your creative resources, and spinning up a strategy that might be reactive where there is really no proven value. I think that you really have to think about, like, am I doing this just to get some form of visibility, or am I doing this because I know that there will be return on my brand for the community?
That's a great point. And I would love to talk about, because I know this happened more so during pandemic times, that a lot of brands, when they tried to tap into these subcultures, they thought, okay, we're going to start in the gaming community. Can y'all throw us back to that point of time and what brands were doing and why they were doing it and what they were doing wrong?
I mean, I think like as a gamer, and I married a gamer, we're very passionate about our hobbies, and I think it is a very protected subculture and it's a very protected community. And I think brands just didn't see that, right? Like they saw huge numbers, they saw huge visibility, and they saw huge participation, and their instinct was, let's get in on it, right? And it's not enough to skin a character on a game or put on a 24-hour live stream on Twitch. I think it needs to push a little bit further, and it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, which is like, listen first and determine if this is a community in which you can show up authentically and actually show up in terms of like, I'm a gamer, I understand you guys, my brand adds value to your life as a gamer, right? Like, and I know that we're tired of talking about Wendy's, but I think Wendy's is the prime example of going into gaming and doing it right, where it's like, it is instinct for us to eat that type of food when we're gaming. It is instinct for us to have that type of personality that they've built within the communities that we live in. So I think it's just a matter of like, are you doing it, like Camille said, to get a quick hit and to take advantage of the visibility in the numbers, or are you doing it because you actually care about the people within that community?
And I think this generation, more so than any generation that came before, like they are clocking that and they are calling BS immediately. Like there is no fooling Gen Z on social media to your authenticity and connection and knowledge and care about a community. They know, and they will eat you alive.
That's such a great point. And it's interesting because these brands, when they want to dive in and immerse in this world of subcultures, they realize really quickly, if they didn't pick up on it before jumping in, that they're not always necessarily reaching millions of impressions and users with what they're putting out, because they're trying to set up a successful moment of valuable comments and long-term relationships and partnerships with their followers and customers and even sometimes other brands. So for these brands that are used to reaching these incredible large metrics, and engaging in these subcultures can kind of feel like a step back. So how do y'all help clients start to shift their mindset around the value of these niche communities?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's reframing the value equation, which truthfully, I think as strategists, we've been trying to do for quite some time. What is the value of engagement and what is it driving for your business? I think engaging a subculture isn't just, hey, we're going to speak to less people. It's about speaking more meaningfully to the right people that are going to drive results for you over time. Who's going to amplify your message and your brand best, right? And I think cultural capital often leads to commercial capital. And that's the type of conversation we're trying to have with clients, is how do we look at cultural KPIs versus business KPIs, and what parts of your marketing ecosystem are driving specific parts of your needs. That said, if your brand's goal is mass awareness, broad reach, and that's how you're measuring success internally, subcultures instinctively aren't going to feel like the right fit, but it's not either or, right? Like we can still scale stories strategically. Again, with many of our clients, we're exploring those dual KPIs to understand like what's social getting you, what are certain channels getting you. I think it's all about like how do we build toward both intentional strategies, paid social strategies, but also community management strategies that allow us to show up without investing huge amounts of dollars within subcultures that might be intimidating to clients. I think subcultures feel like they might start really small, but with the right strategy, they can ladder up to much bigger success for a brand overall, especially with that authenticity that we've been talking about.
You know, it's interesting because this has been not just in social media, but in marketing in general, kind of the story of all time, right? It's mass reach. How do I get in front of as many people with the most, widely appealing story as possible versus marketing to smaller communities and smaller spaces in more narrow geographical locations. And what, as strategists, we're always going to say, long-term brand development and loyalty trumps wide reach and watered down messages every single time. As Gabby mentioned, that's not to say you can't do both. They're not mutually exclusive. You can do both. You can do both on social media as well. But ignoring the value that these communities bring to the conversation around your brand to get to those ultimate bottom line business goals. It might not be the immediate turnaround. It might not be the immediate, viral post week in and week out, but that relationship that you're building is going to be valuable for your brand for a long time to come.
Yeah. And I think it's like, sorry, go ahead, Camille.
I was just going to say, I think when we go back to those conversations that we have with the client too, as Gabby and Rachel mentioned, really are specific around which each of our strategies, what we're testing, and what it's going to result in. We've worked really closely with a lot of our clients to develop some custom dashboarding, which we're really happy about, a big focus on social analytics at Movement. And one of the things that we've been able to do there is create up custom views in our dashboards where people are going to be able to see, okay, here are the results that you're getting from your subculture strategy and community. Here are the results that you're getting from your BAU always on content, and really working with them side by side to make sure that they understand what it is they're seeing, how we're moving forward towards that goal, and being able to really separate those parts of the data story so they can understand how those tests are resulting for them.
Yeah, and I think the data story is especially important, right? Like when we sit down with clients and they say, is the story you want to tell that you got 5 million impressions, 10 million views, or is the story you want to tell something a little bit more deeper and really show off the success of like, we are engaging positively with people and not just like getting results, but also boosting our sentiment, right? Like making a shift in the way that we're perceived because of the way that we're showing up over time.
Oh, I love this. I love where y'all took the conversation. It's so intriguing, and it's amazing to see also with some of the subcultures that have been built up so well, to a point that some big brands have, of course, as y'all know, side accounts and pages just dedicated to those communities. And it really is something to keep an eye out for. And like you said, it's a mindful process of understanding, should we be doing it? How can we be doing it? And working with, incredible minds like y'all at Movement to do it well. It does establish that long-term relationship with their fans in a way that a lot of other social media content cannot. So that's really cool. I would love, before we wrap up, to hear from each of you one piece of advice that you wish more brands would take to heart in this ever-changing world of social strategy.
I love this question because this is something that we really believe in at Movement Strategy, which is social media is not a secondary or tertiary marketing channel. It is not a content repository where every internal team at your brand or your company thinks that they could just throw some information on social media and that is going to lead to some type of success. It will not. Social media is the place where you can tap into the communities, test and learn content time over time, engage back and forth on a person-to-person level with your communities, and that makes it, in our collective opinion, not just a primary marketing channel, but perhaps the primary marketing channel in 2025. So start treating social media the way that we do at Movement, which is putting it at the center of your marketing program and that marketing ecosystem, rather than an afterthought or something that can be built on after the fact of your other marketing or advertising experiments. So I would say, TVCs, for example, for a long time, social media was, hey, can you just cut this down? Or, hey, can you turn this into posts for social media? I think we all know at this point that that doesn't work. But I think even more so, research and insight and audience behavior that's derived from social media can actually be the brief and the guidance for creating things like TVCs or billboard advertisements, etc. Social should really be a part of that process from beginning through sustain. So
yeah, and I think to that point, it's volume doesn't equal success. Like, what are you really adding by posting 20 times a day, right? Like, sure, your reach numbers will go up because you have 20 posts going up a day, but you don't need a crazy amount of content volume and obsessive posting schedules to reach the right people at the right time, because then you're just adding more chatter to a very diluted space already.
I'll add to that. I think, we're inclined to treat social like a broadcast channel, but it really does come back to behavior. Rachel talked about the brand character. A big part of that is also really understanding our audience subsets, really being able to study why people are posting, why people are watching, saving, and sharing. So really understanding the behavior of what people are diving into, not to be the data girly, but to bring it back to, we've really, really focused heavily investing in social data, understanding what works for us, what works for our clients, but really what's moving the needle for people as well, why they're motivated to post. Bringing it back to behavior is just the most important thing at this point. We've heard Mosari talk about how shareability is the number one thing driving social shares. It's all going to be about behavior going forward, not about posting cadence, time. So really understanding your audience.
Oh, these were fantastic answers, and thank you so much for sharing. Rachel, Camille, Gabby, it was a pleasure having you on and hearing about all the incredible work that y'all do for Movement every day and for our clients. And I can't thank you enough for your time.
Thank
you.
The pleasure was all ours.
Bye.